Good morning and welcome back to the podcast, Evil Dungeon Master Universe Podcast. I am your host, Evil Dungeon Master Vince, and today is Friday and it's a new podcast. The weekend is upon us. Gaming is upon us for most people, at least it is for me. Shadowrun Unisystem will be tomorrow for me. Got a new player starting in that. Can't wait to see how the game goes. Looking forward to how this cinematic Unisystem works in hand with Shadowrun. It's a fun experiment to try doing. I always enjoy things like that. I hope you're doing well out there. It's the morning time. I'm drinking my coffee, trying to think of a thing to do for the podcast today. So I looked into my email, asked the DM at theevildm.com, which I often get emails with questions that sometimes people don't want answered. This person didn't say that. So, and they also, I think it might be the same person that commented on my Army of Darkness cinematic universe combat video. So maybe, I don't know. I was talking to in the comments on that video that's on my channel right now, Doc Ogre, and I happened to get an email this morning saying, "Hey there, hope you're doing well. I've been thinking about switching to Theater of the Mind style for my D&D games instead of using grids for combat. I've heard mixed opinions, so I'd love to get your take on it. How does it affect storytelling and player engagement? Any tips or insights you could share? I really value your expertise and would appreciate your thoughts on this. Thanks, Timothy." So, Timothy, if you're the same person that said this on YouTube, we had a conversation and you emailed it in. Perfect. Thank you. Let's do this for a podcast today. I appreciate the material. Anyway, theater of the mind is kind of difficult to do. It's something that you just can't, I don't think you could just pick up and start doing. The GM has a lot of control over combat when it comes to theater of the mind. Now, you as the GM have to do a lot of description at least, or set a basis with your players on how you want to handle theater of the mind. Now, when I handle theater of the mind, I generally assume when people engage in combat that the two sides are standing near each other, kind of like if you think of an old side-scrolling video game where both teams, or like maybe one of the old Final Fantasy games when both teams were standing on one side or the other. Now you can describe things along the way to help players get a little bit more imagination going for what they're seeing compared to what you're seeing. And that's where players have to ask questions as well. Is there any place I can hide behind? Well, you're in an office. Yeah, there's a couple desks you can hide behind. So now they know they're in an office area, which you described already. And there are some desks they can hide behind. So now they can picture an area in a typical office with a bunch of desks, some people maybe standing behind them, around them. Then they could say, generally players will have to say, well, I want to go attack one of the, we'll just say goblins in there for now. One of the corporate goblins. Okay. Can I attack one of the corporate goblins? Yeah, you can walk up and run up and take a swipe at them. There's 1, 2, 3, or 4, or 5, and then they just pick a number. You have to keep track as a GM of whom they are attacking by labeling it by numbers, or if they're different monsters, names. I generally just do it by numbers. And if there's something protecting them, I will tell them that. Like, for example, when we were playing our Starfinder game, they were in one of the lab rooms, and I was describing it to them based on what the lab looks like. They all had a picture in their mind. There were some shelves where one of the player characters heard a noise, so she went behind the shelves into a small alcove area where she would only be able to stand. Maybe another person could stand next to her. So I was kind of describing how cramped it was. And there happened to be a monster in there, like an alien monster that was hiding back there. Now, the rest of the group had to figure out how to hit this creature without hitting her because the shelving units were in the way. So they could get behind her and try to shoot over her, but only a couple people could do that at once. The rest of them had no idea what to do because of the shelving unit was. And so one of them finally figured out, they asked, can I just pull the shelving down on the floor? And I said, yeah, it's a small shelving unit that you can basically just throw on the ground. And once they did that, it opened up more of the area for them to actually fight. So there has to be a kind of an agreement when it comes to theater of the mind also with you as a GM. Your players have to trust you that you are going to provide them with information or opportunities. With theater of the mind, I like to give a lot of leeway to the scenario or the scene, because obviously we're all playing and we're all imagining in our minds. Everybody sees everything different. So when a player wants to do something, generally you're going to say yes to the situation and you're not going to say no unless it doesn't make any sense. Or you've already established a reason why they can't do it. Like, for example, the shelving units. The shelving was in the way, so that other people couldn't attack. No one thought to ask until later on, well, can I move it, or can I throw it down, or can I destroy it, until later in the combat. Now, as a GM, it's not your job to tell them to do that. You could suggest it if they seem to be all out of ideas or they're just blocking ideas. You can say, well, I mean, you look at the shelving unit, you probably could just destroy it to get to the monster. Or the player could have their character back up a little bit so the monster comes out from behind these shelving units so you all have a chance to get at it. There's those situations, and I like to suggest things a lot during combat when it comes to uh, when they're in a tough situation like that. And it's a little bit rough sometimes when you do theater of mind combat, so you have to give a lot of leeway, like I've been saying. People who are used to using minis and a tabletop with grid and stuff like that, or a virtual tabletop with tokens or something, have a hard time have a hard time using theater of the mind because they're so used to just being able to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, I could see it. I can attack it. There really is no conversion from that to theater of the mind. They're two different aspects when it comes to uh, gaming. You, as the GM, have to determine the spacing and then try to describe it to the players as best as you can. Uh, Generally, if a player wants to, like I said before, run up and attack something, unless you provide a reason why they can't, a solid reason, like there's water in the way, or he's hiding behind some cabinets, so you're going to have to climb over the cabinets in the office to get to him. Um, or the orc is standing on top of the staircase looking down, so you'll have to run up the stairs to get to him, so you're not going to be able to get to him until next round. Things like that will be a reason why. There should never be a no when it comes to theater of the mind combat, unless, again, it makes sense to say a no. Like, going back to my Starfinder example, the monster was in the corner, in that little space, fighting the one character that happened to see the monster, and only one other person will be able to step up next to her and fight the monster. So if another player wanted to step up and stab, you'd have to kind of say, no, there's no room unless somebody steps back. And that'd be the same thing as if we were playing virtual tabletop. If I described that scene and wrote it all out, here is the monster in the corner, here are the shelving units, I've drawn it on the map, here is your character, here's your character, here, blah, 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 your character. And the two characters step into the two squares that is in that small space to fight the monster. How are you going to get in there then? You don't, because you can't. There's no space to get in there. Sure, you can cross through friendly squares in most games. They allow that, but then the monster's in that square, so no. You can't cross over into the monster square, so you're kind of screwed. Unless you have a really long weapon, like a spear or something that you can kind of stab through. I'll allow that. That's no problem. You could stand behind another character and or between them and kind of stab your spear or whatever, or really long sword. If you have a really long sword, nah, that wouldn't work. Have to be like some type of weapon that is longer than usual to hit. Ranged weapons, again, you'd have a chance due to a tight space hitting your companions. Generally, it's not advised to do that, but players will try to attempt, and I will say just don't roll ones. You should be fine. And when you roll one, you risk the chance of hitting your companions in my game. So that's the risk you take. A 20 will do wonders for you, but a 1 will not do anything good for you. That's just how it rolls. But yeah, there's no real conversions. I know Doc Ogre was asking in his comment about conversions, and he had thought he had saw something in one of the books about converting measurements in theater of the mind, but I've never seen anything like that or even used anything like that when it comes to theater of the mind. I've always just made it up and did a lot of hand waving and allow a lot of leeway for characters to do what they really wanted. And combat's a lot faster when it comes to theater of the mind, because you don't have people sitting there going, well, if I move over here or I move over there. No, I hate that. That's why a lot of the newer combats for the newer systems take so long, because not a lot of people were ready and they're just sitting there. When I played in a bunch of 5e games, I dreaded every one of those combats when I played at the gaming store, because there was always two or maybe one player that would sit there on their turn going, and thinking and contemplating when they were like third or fourth in combat. Now, I could see if you're first in the combat order, maybe you might take a few extra minutes to think about what you want to do when the combat starts because you're just being thrown right into it. But with something like 5e or Pathfinder combat or even Starfinder combat, generally you've got a few minutes if you're down the line for initiative to think about what you want to do. And on your turn, you should be like, boom, I move or I attack or I cast or something. Not sit there thinking, well, if I move 5 squares this way, it's just, no, that just, no. That's what drove me nuts about a lot of the combat. But then again, you get the same thing if you're playing older editions. So it's nothing to really do with the editions. It's just a matter of the people playing the game. Hopefully that helps. That's generally how Theater of the Mind combat does. And sometimes you will have to draw things out with Theater of the Mind. I have done many of times because sometimes you just don't get it. And that's understandable. Everybody thinks of things differently. And you'll have to draw it out for players. That's why we would have like a dry erase board or a dry erase mat or something like that. So you can quickly jot down to show what's on the field and what the players can see. And that way they can kind of judge it. When we play online, a lot of times I will give them like a quick drawing of what it looks like using something like Miro, or on Discord you can throw like it's just a general drawing out for them. It's like a whiteboard feature you can use, and you can just throw it out there so they could see it. Now, if you're sitting in person, you quickly could just grab a piece of paper and just jot down things and then slap it on the table, and then they have a great idea. So it really depends. I prefer Theater of the Mind combat over any other combat because it moves quicker for me, and I'm not really a combat person to begin with, so I like more investigation. I like more role playing, and I like versus roles. Combat last. So tell me what you think in the comments below. Theater of the Mind, how you handle it with your game. If you know of a book that actually has the rules for Theater of the Mind playstyle, throw it down in the comments so Doc Ogre can see what it is, because he's looking for that book. And I don't know of that book. I don't know every new book out there. I know probably a good amount of them, but not all of them. Keep it original, keep it old school. Good night, God bless, and we will see you next time. Good night, everyone.